Well, hi there, family and friends. I'm in the kitchen again. And this time I am making another soup. I'm making some Napa cabbage and white bean soup with Napa cabbage that we grew in the garden this summer. And this recipe is basically a classic, but it's also a legacy gem in that you can kind of change up the flavors in this soup depending on what you have growing in your garden, what you can get at the market, what it is that you like. Do you want it to be a white soup, or do you want to put some tomato in it and make it be a red soup? What kind of spices do you put in it? Herbs, things like that. So there's a lot of leeway here. So I think maybe this one will end up in both classics because I make it all the time, but also in legacy gem in that it's got a lot of diversity, and it's something that I've developed over the years simply by experimenting. So let's get started. I got everything prepped here for us. The first thing I did is I took a pound of turkey meat and I sauteed it and cooked it in the soup pot. So get yourself a nice big soup pot and then put a little oil in there and take a pound of ground turkey and saute that up. And I have a little clip I insert here. All right, here's 1 pound of ground turkey, all cooked in the bottom of the soup pan, and leaving all its good flavor in there. I'm going to take it out and then continue on with the rest of the elements of the soup. But first element is a pound of ground turkey. You can see how I did it. And put that to the side. Take that off. Leave all the goodness from when you cook the meat in here. First part of legacy gem is it doesn't have to be turkey. It could be ground sausage I've done. Not sure what else you might like to do. I like the turkey and the sausage, but I'm sure you have good ideas. So you take that out, you have your pot, and then you need your vegetables, your harder vegetables that have to take a little time to saute. So I have chopped carrot here, just nice cubed carrot, and I have an onion that I've chopped up as well. I put a little more oil in the bottom of the pan if you want to as well. So these things, what we're going to do is we're going to sweat these down. We're going to turn the oven on, turn the stove on, and we're going to get those cooking over medium heat. And the next thing that I put in is the Napa cabbage. Now, when you buy Napa cabbage at the store, in the Asian market or the supermarket, it's always a nice tight head. When I grow it in the garden, I get these beautiful leaves that come up almost more like a lettuce. Don't ask me why it's different, but it is. But regardless, Napa cabbage always has a firm spine sort of in the middle. So if you buy it from the grocery store, you can kind of just cut it off and chop it up. If you're using homegrown, what I do is I cut the spine out, so it just leaves me with the leaves like this. Right? So I have my spines, and they're hard, so they need to cook longer so that they're nice and soft in the soup. So then I just chop them up. I take those spines, put them in a bowl, and then I take the leaves and I cut those down lengthwise. Right, you're seeing this? And then I sort of chiffonade it in maybe 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch slices. And these are going to be our bite-size cabbage in the soup later on. So I have a bowl of those. So I've pre-done those. So these are my greens, and these are my stems. Now, with this soup, I'm going to put the stems in with the carrots and the onion so that they will start to wilt down, right? And depending on how many vegetables you put in the soup, your liquid may vary. So what the recipe calls for is 4 cups of chicken broth. Again, if you want this to be vegetarian, you don't want to put any meat in it, you want to just do vegetables, you could use vegetable stock and leave out the turkey, right? That's another way to do this, would be really good. But however you do it, you start out with these carrot, the cabbage, and the onion, and you get that sauteing really well. You could use regular cabbage for this, excuse me, if you wanted to just use, you know, any kind of green cabbage, regular cabbage, and do it the same way. Just any hard bits of the cabbage, make sure you get in here and you saute ahead of time so that when you have the soup at the end, you don't have any really hard bits of cabbage in there. So this is going to saute off. You give it a little mix. It's probably going to take 10 or 15 minutes for this to come down and be nice and translucent and nice and cooked down so that then we can go on with the rest of the soup. So before I do that, let me just talk about the rest of the ingredients I have here. I have some garlic, which we're going to put in after all of those vegetables have sauteed down nicely. I have a little salt and pepper. I have some dried oregano. This oregano I actually dried from my garden. You can just use store-bought oregano. You can actually, if you want to, which I will, I'm going to break this up and put this dried oregano in now while those vegetables are sauteing, and that will make sure that these dried herbs from the garden, you know, get enough moisture, all the moisture that they need, and start to release their flavor into the soup at an early stage, which is always good. So, and again, you can play with these spices. You can put some thyme. Some lemon thyme would be good in here. Sometimes I put, you can put both thyme and oregano. One thing I would not put is basil. I don't like that flavor in with the Napa cabbage. But like I said, to each his own. So anyway, so there. And at this point, I would put some salt and pepper onto this mirepoix of veggies. There's my pepper. Here it is. My home done pepper. I like to grind my pepper. I think I have a video on grinding pepper. I'm pretty sure I do. That's what I use. I use my home ground pepper. Especially in a soup, it's really good. I have the 3 kinds of pepper in here, the red, the white, and the black. And it really adds a lot of dimension to everything I cook. You can see I'm almost out. I gotta grind some more. All right, so we have our chicken broth and we have some white cannellini beans. And the most important thing for this soup that we have, which I'm sure you can find in the supermarket, is a rind, Parmesan cheese rind. We're gonna put that in after we put our liquids. So we've got everything ready. We just have to wait for these to saute. Let's do that, and I'll come back when these are all ready to go, and we'll add the rest of the ingredients to the soup, and we'll go from there. See you in a few minutes. Bye. Okay, here I'm back with my sauteed vegetables in my nice big soup pot. So they've been going maybe about 7 minutes or so. As you can see, they're nice and starting to cook down. And they're all coated in that little bit of oil that I had in the bottom of the pan. You can use any kind of oil that you like. You can use olive oil or vegetable oil or canola oil, however you want to flavor your soup. I just use a very light olive oil. So now it's time to put in our garlic. So that's about 2 cloves of minced garlic. And I minced the head. And just stir that around and let that saute with the vegetables for a minute or so. You'll start to smell the garlic when the garlic is cooked. And I took my own advice earlier since I mentioned the lemon thyme. So I did add some. I added about, I don't know, half a tablespoon or so in here with the oregano. I figured we'll have both this batch. Lemon thyme I grow in my garden in the summer. You could use regular thyme if you have it. Dried thyme, fresh thyme would be good. Whatever you can whatever you can get, or like I said, if you just want to do the oregano, that's fine too, or vice versa, take the oregano out and just use thyme. Either way, it's delicious. Or you might have some other herb that you want to put in here to give it a different flavor. Tarragon might be nice. That would be good. Whatever you have hanging around or growing in your garden or easy to get at the store. All right. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, so next, what I like to do is put in the chicken stock. So like I said, it can be chicken stock, it can be vegetable broth, something to give it flavor. I wouldn't do water because this is a vegetable soup, and the water probably wouldn't be as flavorful. And so that's that. And I'm gonna put in, because I have so many vegetables today, I'm gonna put in a little extra water here. The recipe does not call for it, but with the volume that I'm using today, I'm gonna add a little extra moisture, and I'm gonna put in 2 chicken bouillon cubes because I added the water and I want that chicken broth to have a little extra flavor. I'm adding that as well, and I'll put these additions into the comments. And we are going to then add our rind. Now this is going to come out of the soup at the end, obviously, because you don't want to eat it, but it is going to give the broth a really nice umami flavor. So we're doing that, and that's it for now. We're going to bring this to a simmer, and as soon as this comes up to the simmer, I'll be back with the next step and finishing steps of this delicious Napa cabbage and bean soup. All right, I put the top on the soup pot to help along the simmering, and you can see that the base of the soup is just coming up to a nice simmer. There's our cheese rind getting nice and soft and adding all its flavor to the liquids. So now it's time to add the stars of the show. So we're going to add the turkey in. This turkey is cooked all the way through, but it'll continue to cook in the soup. So there goes the turkey. And here's our 2 cans of cannellini beans. I have rinsed and drained these beans. I've rinsed them in the can. I don't like the thick viscosity of the liquids that are in with the beans, but if you're a fan of that, you don't even have to rinse them if you don't want to. Also, if you don't want as many beans, just put 1 can of beans or leave the beans out. Again, totally up to you. So you can see that this is getting pretty thick. All right, and the last thing we have to add is all of our greens. So we're going to take them by handfuls. These are the greens from the Napa cabbage, and they're going to melt down into that liquid. And we're going to continue to let this simmer just for maybe another 10 minutes until the greens are totally wilted and cooked through. They will turn color, they'll get darker. And then once we do that, our soup will be done. So, looking at this, and the amount of things I have in here, I am just going to add a little bit more water, and I think it'll be fine because I did put 2 bouillon cubes in there. I want there to be enough broth, so just a little bit more water. Again, good reason why this is both a classic and a new addition and a legacy gem, because you kind of use it by your eye, right? If things look like they need to be adjusted, you just adjust them. So everything's in here. This is looking really good. beautiful soup. All right, I'm gonna let this simmer for another 10 minutes or so. I'll come back, I'll show you what that final pot looks like, and maybe we'll have a little taste. So, cabbage and bean soup. Yum, yum. So the soup has been simmering now for about, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, maybe a little longer, because this whole big pot has to come back up to the boil after you add the beans and the meat and the greens, right? So it takes a little while for that to happen. And then you just let it perk away once it reaches a simmer. Don't boil it, but you let it perk away for about another 10 minutes. And you can see that the greens have turned a nice darker color. They're not overcooked at this point. And this whole pot of soup looks really delicious and it smells really delicious. And it's done. So I'm gonna turn off the stove and I'm gonna give you just a few parting comments, and then making this soup is now something that you can do. All right, not a hard process at all, right? So now that it's done and I've turned it off, I am just gonna put the lid on it. I leave it tipped a little bit so that the steam could escape, and I take it off the heat, push it back on the stove, and let it cool off. And that'll take a couple hours before it cools down to a temperature that you can actually work with it. Of course, you can serve it immediately to your family. Take the cheese rind out of the soup. Once it's cooled down, just go in there with a tongs or a spoon or something and take the cheese rind out and throw that away. And then once I do when it's cool, I put it in Tupperware containers, single or double serving size. And some of them I freeze, and some of them I leave if I think we're going to eat them during the week. So this freezes extremely well, this soup. And when you serve it, in a beautiful bowl, put out some Parmesan cheese. If people want to sprinkle that on, that's a great addition to the soup once it's done. So from my recipe box to yours, Napa cabbage and bean soup. Hope you try it soon. Hope you enjoy it. And Legacy Gem or New Edition, whichever you think it is, you'll probably find it in both my playlists. So take care, everybody. Hope to see you soon. It's the summer, so we're doing a lot of cooking here in my kitchen. Take care. Bye.